y'all. Pete Cossaboon here with the Project Positive Change, the Positive Vibe Show. I'm here with 4 other lovely visionaries with me today. We're talking on the subject of personal empowerment. This is number 2. And what we're going to really be talking right now is about how personal empowerment really deals with others and our boundaries with others. Can we express our care for others and really kind of get into ourselves and find our own empowerment? And can we still be of service to others while still being our own authentic self? I think that's really what we're going to pick up. Susan had a point that she was talking, I think, Vidya too. Who wants to go first, Susan or Vidya?
I can go first if you want for a second. I understand what Lesley was talking about in the first segment, about there are certain people in our lives or relationships where it's more difficult to stand in those boundaries. So I was just talking about the different types of boundaries that we can set. And if your boundaries are semi-permeable, you'll be able to make adjustments as you move along. It doesn't mean you're allowing people to step over your boundary or you're not standing in the power of it, but you're open to new information or new circumstances or new details that might change what's happening. And in the situation with really close family members, it's sometimes difficult to just walk away and release that person from your life because it might not be possible. So you gotta kind of be a little more flexible instead of, I find that people, for some reason, think of life or their thoughts as very linear and very black or white. And I like people to think more about this kind of wave pattern and a whole basket of colors. You can make many decisions and many opportunities, and it's a million shades of whatever you want it to be. So it's not black or white. There's a whole scope to our lives that we don't touch on. And that's what I'm referring to when I say semi-permeable, because it might get colored purple that day and you've got to make a little bit of a jog. A jog.
A jog.
A zig or a zag.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. And actually, Lesley, I was going to address kind of riff off what you said about shifting energy, because that's sort of been a really interesting experience for me in the past year as well. We were all talking a little bit earlier about how I kind of been doing some inner work, and some of us may have those mother-daughter relationships. Some of them are gorgeous. Some of them are a slightly dysfunctional dance. I'm one of those that has a slightly dysfunctional dance with her mom. It's been that way for years, but something has shifted in this past year. Some of it, like you said, Susan, was setting those healthy, semi-permeable boundary. I really kind of got to the point where I said, Mom, I love you dearly, but I'm just not in the space, like you said, Bobbi, for family, gossip, and drama. I just don't want to talk about it. I'm leaving. In those instances, I'm powering out. I love that phrase, Susan. Thank you. That's my new mantra, powering out. But I also realize that now what I'm doing is I'm shifting energy, like you said, Lesley, and I'm kind of just sitting back and going, if that's what you want to talk about, go ahead and talk about it. I'm just going to put up this little non-permeable barrier where I'm still open and available to you, but it is not impacting me anymore. I'm not going to react to it, respond to it. And she stopped. We no longer have, so it was a very subtle shift. But what I was saying is, yes, you're exactly right. I think the answer to your question of how did I do that was, it's not so much how we did that, but it's how we stepped into our space and said, I'm no longer interacting with this energy, with this way of thinking, living, being. And when we do that, the other, because we have now empowered ourselves to be in that space and honoring our space, our personality persona within that space, and saying, this is who I am. The other has no choice but to shift as well, because they're no longer interacting with the person of old. They're now interacting with a completely new person, and they have to shift. And that is a fascinating dance to watch.
Right.
Because you're just kind of going, I did that?
Yeah, it's
good, man. Power on.
Yeah, and we're talking about empowerment. It's a very empowering thing. But whether it's about what am I going to let in my space, or what how can I help out in the situation? In either one of those cases, it's really empowering. Like, I did that. I calmed everything down. But there's, I always experiment like outside too, with like strangers too. Like, I remember one time I got in a fender bender and this lady came up to me and she said, this is all your fault. You know, we bumped into each other in a parking lot, and, you know, you have insurance, but, you know, and she kept coming at me, and I looked at the situation. I was trying to, and I had a wonderful day before that, you know, and this could really ruin a person's day where you forget about all the wonderful stuff going on, you know, and I started feeding into it a little bit, like, do you have insurance? You know what I mean? And then she, you know, she wanted that. She wanted me to be angry. She wanted an excuse to be angry. And then I just calmed down and I said, you know, this just happened, and there's nothing we can do about it, and, you know, blah blah blah. And she looks so confused, like, what am I gonna do?
Right. I love doing that to
she got her haircut and she started complaining to her. So the poor lady. But I was like, wow, like, I did that, you know. And I came home, and even though I had a fender bender, I felt like I still had a pretty good day, you know. So yeah. What I mean is, can you resonate? Can you vibrate no matter what's going on around you, you know? But it's easier with a stranger when you're in your home and you love these people and you have a life with them. You know, you have, like Susan says, that there's this different kind of boundary that you have to step in as a different role. You know, it's not just about you anymore, right?
And I teach that about loss to the widows as well, is that, you know, they sit there and say, you know, it's so hurtful, it's so this, it's so that people don't understand. Trust me, I've been there. But like you say, when you're standing in front of them, I just tell them to say, you know, let them have their space, because they don't understand that is not their world. And like you said, Lesley, when you're out and about in the real world, Vidya, when you said it's about, I like to have this mantra that I tell my customers and clients, is that to shift that energy, to empower yourself during actually any hard time in your day, like you're talking about, Lesley, shifting that energy when you had the fender bender. I just tell my people to say, you know, a little affirmation. I'm a big believer in affirmations, you know, to shift energy. I just say, none of these things move me. And I just repeat it, none of these things move me. And some of my friends will say, well, that's kind of like you're being emotionally unavailable. And I said, is it? It's really not. It's me having that wall, like Vidya was talking about, of sometimes we get so filled, especially post-loss, we are so filled with so many things to do and so much pain that I can't carry other people's burdens anymore. And that's part of being authentic as well. And it's not being emotionally unavailable. It's me protecting what I have left, let's put it that way, to empower myself to move through life still. Because like Susan was saying, we can stay in that victimhood. And if I don't empower myself to move through, just like everyone else, through any of our hardships in life, you're going to sit in that space and you're going to be that negative energy. So I like to use affirmations for that empowerment as well, of shifting that energy, saying none of these things move me. And it's not me emotionally not caring. It's me just saying, let's ebb and flow here, because life is in transition constantly. And you're right, it shifts the energy right away for everyone around you. You know, even my kids, my voice, they're freaking out about something and I'll just be like, none of these things move me. And, you know, they're just like, she's not flipping out. So,
well, unfortunately, you discovered a really difficult way of what things are really important in life, you know, and can we have that no matter what happens to us in life? Can we say, why am I getting so hung up on this little thing, or this personality? I mean, that really is meaningless, right? If you really think about it in the bigger scheme of things, you know. Yeah.
It sounds bad, but I almost sit and giggle about hardships anymore, because honestly, I've already been through the worst. So I try to teach my widows to just sit there and kind of sit there and go, yeah, I've already kind of been through everything I can be through. So this is really no big deal. And it's very empowering, really, honestly, because we're like superstars. Okay, I can do anything now.
Yeah, it's so true. I do the same thing. And it's like, think about it. Think about it for a second. If you have survived all of this and you've come out on the other end and you're empowered and you're healing and you're moving forward and you're creating a new life for yourself, but there's really not much that can get you down or affect you. You've actually you've come through the very worst that could happen.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to tie that back to authentic self and personal empowerment, all of you triggered another thought. And I think some of that energy shift happens also because when you are operating from your core being, from your authentic self, you're you. You're in a state of joy and empowerment already because you're simply being you. You're in your you know, your horizontal self, as I think of it, as your corporeal form or your 3D form, is vibrating, like you said, Lesley, in the same frequency as your infinite being, as your inner being. You know, in Sanskrit we say namaste, and many people, I don't know how many people know this, but namaste stands for Namaste. I see you, or the divinity in me sees the divinity in you. And so when we are aligned, when we are in our authentic self, we are aligned with that inner spirit of ourselves, with our inner divinity. And I think when you reach that state, like Bobbi, you said, there's really not much that can get you down because you're operating from that core happiness and joy you feel just being you.
Yeah.
I know one thing. When you actually get in touch with your authentic self and you start living your authentic life for you, your peace, your ability to find peace and quiet and calm in every day, your level of freedom it's astronomical. It's just out there because you feel no desire to compare or no desire to complain or none of those desires. And if something happens, like with Lesley with the fender bender, you can kind of go, okay, well, I'm not going to let this ruin my day. So I always tell my clients, you know, there's a point where when you become really authentic and you start to heal and you've gone through all the raw emotions of what happened to you and you're moving out of that, that you are just at peace with yourself. And that helps you to live in that sort of calm, authentic way because you're very, very peaceful at your core with who you are, what you're capable of, what has happened to you. And it's freedom. It's just personal freedom.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, I want to go back to authentic self. It was interesting how you were saying you were such a outgoing, you know, loud kid. And I was the opposite. I was really quiet, believe it or not. I know, yada, yada, yada now. So I'm making up for lost time. But truly, as that child, I was the observer and I wanted the peace, you know, and I didn't want all this noise. So it's interesting how while I'm more talkative, that authentic self about peace is almost coming back to me, you know, like I'm, you know, like how can I, you know, life should be peaceful, right? I mean, you know, and I mean, it's not. It's always we're imperfect.
It is like no.
No, I'm like an adventurer. Peace is not my thing. It's there's no time.
You know what I mean? Like I mean, dealing with things that are. You know, they're going on around you that you don't necessarily resonate. Can you be peaceful? As a kid, I was fairly peaceful, but like as I got adult, I was like one of those complainers in the corner, like not it, you know, and so coming back to that, being that child with wide eyes, that inner peace again. It's like I'm shifting back to that childhood, not the one that is afraid of everything, the one who sees things the way they can be, you know.
And I think what you're saying, Lesley, if I understand it correctly, is you're finding that peace within yourself because you're able to shift back into that child who's able to observe everything. And it's the same for me. I'm at peace with myself because I can be the child who can constantly look for a new adventure every day. There's always a mountain to climb, a river to ford, a dream to pursue. I'm Indiana Jane with her fedora and her web out hunting.
You see how that's the childlike eyes, right?
Yes.
Like you're,
whatever the embodiment of that authentic self, I think the piece of the peace that you have to find, sorry, I love alliterations and wordplay, comes from stepping, like you said, Susan, and like you said, Bobbi, it's really about when you find, and not just find that authentic self. It's not just about saying, okay, this is my authentic self. She is yada, yada, yada. It's about embodying it every single day in all that you do, have, experience, create. It's your beingness. When you step into that beingness of your authentic self, you're exactly right. You're at peace with yourself. And when you're at peace with yourself, you are empowered. And when you're empowered, you're untouchable by any of the little dramas around you. And I think that's what it comes down to. That's that little non-permeable bubble I think we can all put around ourselves.
I think it's almost like what we're really saying is to be of the best service to others and even to ourselves is by empowering ourselves and really creating those boundaries, as you would say, Susan, really kind of creating that core strength in ourselves. You know, there's this whole idea, I think, that service to others is really kind of like becoming weak and pliable and all that to other people, but we're really talking about how that true strength and really, you know, resolving who you are is really of the greatest service to others. Would y'all agree?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're serving others and honoring their authenticity. Just because they don't get it, you know, just because they're upset about something doesn't mean I don't honor that. It just means I don't participate in it. But I realize that it's their journey. We're all on our own journeys, right? The ebb and flow of life, the ups and downs. I try to teach just as much as you're going through it right now. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow, right? We're walking through the valley. Guess what? That valley's going to go back up. It's going to go down. So I think it's about honoring that, you know, the ebb and flow of life. Just because you're not where I'm not in competition with you. I'm just
that's another place where peace comes from, is not feeling like you're in competition. And this is something when I first meet a client and they do go through that, you have no idea. One of the things I tell them is that we're not competing with one another. I feel no need to compete with you, and I want you to feel safe to tell your story and know that I'm listening and not competing with you or comparing my story to your story or any of that stuff, because it's so important. It was to me when I started to truly heal, was to not have anybody judging, comparing, criticizing my story, was just to listen to it.
Yeah, and you know, everybody has a different healing time too. You know, I went through some hard times, and I was, you know, seeing counsel, and the girl, you know, she said to me, you know, when are you going to get over it? It's been like a year. You should really get over it, you know. And I was like, well, just because you think I should get over it, it's been a year, doesn't mean that I'm ready to get over it. You know what I mean? So being a counselor, you learn patience, right? Not just with yourself, but with, you know, the people that you are, you know, working with, because, you know, what you feel, you know, it's just very difficult. How long does it take you to mourn? You know, my parents died. How long? I mean, I'm still mourning them, you know, because it's not really mourning as much as it's like, you know, remembering them, feeling the love and missing them, but embracing this new you know, chapter in my life. So how can we, I guess I get it as like, I go back from the childhood to the childhood thing. How do we bring in this fun in life? You know, how we bring it back, how we bring the child within back, you know, despite all that's happened, all of our experiences, you know, and just enjoy life, you know.
Lesley, sorry, Pete.
Go ahead, Susan.
I was just going to say, Lesley, if I could have $1 for every time someone said to me, Bobbi, it's been 6 months, it's been a year, it's been whatever, you should be, you know, done with your grief. Us widows talk about that all the time. You know, any loss, like you're saying, that's their journey, not mine. So I just, you know, gracefully say, well, you know, maybe you could be over it, but I don't believe that grief is a destination. You know, I think we're constantly going to be going through that. And grief, like we're talking about, is loss of anything. Right? Loss is loss. So let's empower each other by honoring everyone's journey is not the same, you know? So I think that's to that point, like you said, is people love to give us that, you know, that advice and, oh, let's be in competition. Listen, how can we be in competition with anyone when we're all one? Okay. We're all one. We are all energy. We are all here to just do our best. Right. So let's not compete. Let's empower.
I love that. I think that's a perfect place to end segment number 2. This has been the Positive Vibes Show on personal empowerment, segment number 2. There'll be another segment coming up with Vidya, Lesley, Susan, and Bobbi here from the Positive Vibes Show, and we'll be back. Watch the next segment.